Welcome, men, to volume 4 of 33, the series. In this volume, we're going to dive headfirst into a huge part of every man's journey. It's something that plays a dominant role in your life, in the lives of men around you, and in the life of just about every man who's ever lived. It's something that probably is in your face day in and day out. For some of us, it's a daily struggle. For others, it brings great satisfaction. For all of us, it creates tensions in life that we have to balance. We're talking about a man and his work. And guys, I can't think of a topic that's more fundamental for a man than his work. It's something that spans most of the years that we have on this earth, whether it's in our youth, when we are spending a lot of our time preparing for a job and figuring out what we want to be when we grow up, or in the prime years of our lives, when work is something we spend a large percentage of our time doing, or in old age, when maybe we are able to enjoy the fruit of our years of labor, or maybe we are wondering if we've really made a difference at all. Work clearly is a dominant force in the life of every man, consuming vast amounts of his energy, his thoughts, and his time. In fact, statistics show that the average man will spend 1/3 of his adult life and nearly half of his waking hours working. Simply stated, work is a big issue, and we can't afford to ignore it. But here's what's crazy, guys. Despite its overriding presence in our lives, despite its importance, surprisingly, work is one of the most under-discussed topics among men. Here's what I mean. Sure, we all complain about our job from time to time, or give the obligatory description when asked what we do at a social event. But most of us have never engaged in a deliberate process that helps us reflect deeply on God's design and purpose for work. And for many of us, work, and even life for that matter, feels like we are just going through the motions, trying to keep our boss happy, being a good boy, and just trying to survive. But guys, it doesn't have to be that way. That's boring, that's uninspiring. Work can be exhilarating, fulfilling, and purposeful. You see, authentic manhood is a life of truth, passion, and purpose. We want to challenge some of the modern misconceptions floating around out there about work that may have crept into our thinking and tragically have become conventional wisdom. We want to give you a new perspective of the nature and purpose of work and how it fits into a gospel-centered vision for our lives. A vision that can actually help you engage your work with an uncommon passion and commitment. In short, we want to take you through a process over the next 6 sessions that will help you to see work from God's perspective and help you to engage at work with His power. In this opening session, we're going to lay some groundwork. We're going to look at why it can be so hard for so many of us to press truth, passion, and purpose into our jobs. And we're going to look at the discord some of us experience between our hopes for work and our actual experience of work. To do this, we want to begin by discussing what all men want out of their jobs. Then, we want to look at how men respond when their work reality differs from their desires. To conclude, we'll step back and examine work from a broader perspective. We'll get a glimpse of how it has changed over the last 200 years and how those changes affect us today. You see, all of us have been subjected to historical and cultural forces that shape what we think about work, how we work, and even the type of work we do. By pausing to understand those forces, we will be enabled to protect ourselves against them rather than being duped by them. So let's begin by looking at what all of us want out of our work. You see, the truth is that most of us want the same basic things. Whether you're a fireman, an investor, a plumber, or a CEO, you most likely want to be a success, receive fair compensation, have the right job fit, and be a part of something bigger than yourself. to do something meaningful. And hear this loud and clear. All of those things are noble desires. Let's unpack each of them briefly. First, we all want to be successful. No one wants to fail at his job or let others down consistently. As a man, we want to develop a skill or an expertise, mastery over some field. We want to be recognized by our peers as someone who contributed, someone who is good at what they do. We want to know that we are adding value and doing excellent work. We also want to be fairly compensated for a job well done. Although money doesn't bring happiness, a lack of money can create a consistent distraction for a man. On the other hand, being paid fairly and on time can empower a man to excel. The third thing men want out of work is the right job fit. We are going to address this more in other sessions. But no man wants to be in a job that doesn't match his skills or personality. Being miscast in your job has a way of slowly draining your energy and breeding frustration. Finally, all of us want to be in a job that is meaningful. Deep down, most of us really want to know that our work matters, that it makes a difference, that it contributes to the good of others or the good of society. We want more than success. We want our work to be purposeful and significant. Despite our hopes and dreams, our actual experience of work can come up far short of our expectations. Many of us struggle to succeed. Our work reality differs from our work expectation. And in the face of challenges and pressures of work, many men respond in predictable and familiar ways. We call these the conventional responses to work. Let me describe 4 of them. The first conventional response is probably the most widespread. It's what I call disengaged. Let's define this as a guy who is merely going through the motions. He's emotionally disconnected at work and has diminished motivation. For him, work feels like the place where he has to put on a mental or even literal costume from 9 to 5 or longer. It's like he's just acting. It's not that he's lazy or doesn't work hard at times. He's just not really passionate about what he's doing. And his job is really just a means to a paycheck, and his ultimate goal is retirement. A recent Gallup survey indicated that 71% of American workers are either not engaged or actively disengaged at work. 71%. Now, the cause of this conventional response often goes back to a common misconception. It's the fallacy that says that work is only a necessary evil, that work is only a means to an end, that it is something you should escape from if you can. In other words, acquiring wealth is really a means so that you can eventually stop working. Unfortunately, this misunderstanding has been robbing men of truth, passion, and purpose ever since sin entered the world. In session 2, we're going to blow this fallacy out of the water. The next conventional response is what I call disappointed. It's when a man experiences a real lack of contentment in his current job because it's not what he expected. It can be caused by the death of a professional dream or failed business venture, being passed over for a promotion, being unemployed or underemployed, or being at a less than desired income level. It can create a mild depression in a man. And it can make work feel like a deficit or a dark cloud in his life. Disappointment is a common response. In fact, less than 1/2 of U.S. workers report being satisfied with their job. And about 1/3 are disappointed in the amount of money they earn and the amount of stress they experience on the job.
Well, I'm an electrician and I work for the city. Well, it's a tough job now, and it can be dangerous. Of course, you're out in the weather all the time. I make a living, but it's tough. I mean, sometimes on evenings or weekends, I'll pick up a little electrical job just, for a little extra cash. It's just hard to get ahead, Of course, I go home sweaty and dirty at the end of every day. Sometimes I think about these old boys that sit up there in their offices, and I bet first thing they do when they get to the office in the morning is check sports scores on their computer. Then they do a few emails, and make a few phone calls, and that's pretty much a day. Hell, the only time an old boy like that sweats is when the elevator's broken and he has to use the stairs.
I am a senior vice president for a successful consulting firm. Yeah, I climb the ladder quickly. I make great money and I have great job security. So yeah, it seems at first glance that I have a good thing going on. The phone never stops ringing. I work directly with the client, so it makes me pretty much beholden to their schedule, which means I never get a moment to disconnect. I'm constantly in meetings, which means I never get anything done, which means I leave work at the end of the day thinking about the work that I still have to get done, which means when I do get home, I can't even enjoy the little time that I have with my family. Last week, there was a maintenance crew working right outside my office window. I was on the phone just watching the crew, and this one guy in particular caught my eye. He was working out there with his earphones on, listening to music. He hadn't shaved in 2 weeks. He was drenched in sweat, but just soaking it in, I mean, he doesn't know how good he has it. He shows up to work that day, does the job he's told to do, and when the whistle blows, he goes home. It must be nice.
I'm a high school football coach. Go Eagles. I've been a football coach for about 15 years. I played ball at a Division III school. And when I graduated, I wasn't quite ready to give up playing football yet, or being around football at least. So I like working with kids. I figured I'll be a coach. It seemed like a perfect fit. And watching those young men develop as players and as people is the greatest feeling in the world. People are like, Bobby, you got it made. You get to coach football and make a difference in those kids' lives. But it's not what they think. I mean, the parents are a nightmare, and the bureaucracy is even worse. I feel like a politician more than anything, more than a coach or a mentor at least. But what it all boils down to is winning. You would think it's about developing the kids, building their character, but it isn't. It's about winning and losing. I mean, last year, 100% of my seniors graduated and went to college, but nobody cares. All they care about is that we went 5-5 in the season. And everyone knew it was a rebuilding year. Maybe I should have just, got my MBA and got a corporate job. Maybe I missed out.
The third conventional response to work is what I call overengaged. This happens when a guy spends all of his time thinking about, planning for, and concerned with his job. Work follows him home and invades his nights and weekends. He lets it sabotage his vacation or time with his family. Unfortunately, being overengaged at work has become a respected behavior in our society. It's even considered a virtue by some. It's also an epidemic. 86% of American men report working more than 40 hours in a typical week, while taking fewer vacation days than people in most countries. One study labeled this vacation deprivation. Overworking has also given rise to another phenomenon, which some psychologists call leisure sickness. It's when you actually have withdrawal symptoms when you're not working. In other words, you can't relax without feeling slightly ill or anxious. Many men often overengage at work because they are prioritizing it over everything else in life. We make it the source of our significance, our identity, worth, or value. In biblical terms, we make it an idol. Now, work is a good thing. And as you will learn in the next session, it is a gift from God. But it wasn't made to be elevated to the most important thing in our lives. And some of us have too high of an expectation for the amount of fulfillment work can truly offer. The final conventional response to work is underworking. This is when a man will do whatever it takes to avoid work. For him, leisure is the goal of life. Guys that struggle with underworking often never declare a career path, but instead choose to dabble around perpetually with part-time or dead-end jobs. When they're actually at work, they're often tempted to do as little as possible. On the job, they're better at pretending to work rather than actually working. This response often springs from a lack of personal ambition or career vision. For others of us, it's just raw laziness, disengaged, disappointed, overengaged, and underworking. These are 4 typical male responses to work. And if we're honest with ourselves and each other, one or more of them have manifested themselves in all of our lives, including my own. The reason is because work is a massive piece of every man's life, and it brings all kinds of tensions into life. What we want out of work and God's purpose for work are often worlds apart. Another reason it can be such a struggle is because of the historical and cultural forces that shape our modern conceptions of work and leisure. Let's close out this session by stepping back and taking a broader view of work. Let's look at the different eras of work and how the ramifications of these eras introduce tensions into our present reality. Historians and sociologists divide work into 3 different eras: the agricultural era, the industrial era, and the informational era. The agricultural era dominated much of human history. It was defined by the cultivation of land for the production of food, usually for the benefit of a single family or a local community. From a work perspective, the essential task of most men during this time was simply to ensure the survival of their families by getting the land to yield food so they could eat. To survive, you had to work the land. As one historian has noted, in ancient times, very few workers could be spared for non-food tasks. As a result, in the agricultural era, the identity and value of a man was most often tied to his relationship with his family and his community rather than his work. Most work was the same. It centered around growing and harvesting food. Now, for many of us, it's probably difficult to imagine an economy dominated by agriculture. But even as late as 1890, 40% of the U.S. population still listed their occupation as farming. It was the number 1 occupation in the country. Many of your grandfathers probably grew up on a farm. Today, however, less than 1% of the U.S. population lists their occupation as farming. The shift away from agriculture was due in part to the emergence of the next major era, the industrial era. With the invention of machines and the possibility of mass production, many men began to leave the fields and instead commute to the city to work in a factory. During the industrial era, we saw an emphasis on efficiency and profit. Assembly lines were created where workers performed the same mechanical task over and over again. The factory system enabled employers to view their employees as merely a means to greater profits and greater productivity. Perhaps you felt that in your job. The boss is just trying to squeeze more production out of you. or get you to log more billable hours, or he micromanages your performance. That type of overmanagement was popularized during the industrial era. The mass production of the industrial era also enabled mass consumption. Now, people could consume more products than ever before, and status and happiness became attached with the types of products a person consumed. The industrial era also helped shift the way men in Western culture understood their value and worth. Now, work became the dominant way men defined themselves. Over the last 50 years, with the advance of the computer, the industrial era has given way to the informational era. Technology and the accessibility of information have made knowledge and creativity prime commodities today. This era is also defined by the use of technology to replace workers, and familiarity with technology is a minimum requirement for many jobs. Finally, the informational era is defined by innovation. Technology is advancing so rapidly, it's hard to predict where things will be in 10 or even 5 years from now. Agricultural, industrial, and informational. We've discussed each of these eras not to give you a history lesson, but to help you understand the forces at play that have created some of the real tensions you might be experiencing at work. I've mentioned some of these tensions already, but let me make a few others explicit. For instance, many of you are experiencing a real blurring between your leisure and your work. The reason is because the informational era has ensured that people can be electronically connected all the time. And today, your employer or clients may expect you to be available 24/7, responding promptly to every email or text. As a result, you're never able to truly rest. One author put it this way: in contemporary technological civilization, which can boast of remarkable labor-saving innovations, human beings paradoxically work more than they've ever worked before. Increasingly, people's lives today alternate between frenzied work and frenzied play. Rest has been driven out of leisure. One of the things we'll do in this volume is to help you deal with the tension between work and rest. Another tension many of you may feel is having to change jobs or careers multiple times. You see, the informational era, the era in which we are living, is characterized by a high degree of vocational turnover. Change has become the norm, not the exception. And such consistent change can create tension if you or others are expecting the vocational stability that was the characteristic of the agricultural and industrial eras. Your father or grandfather may have kept the same job their whole lives, or stayed with the same company for 30 years. And if their definition of success is stability, they may be perplexed by your consistent vocational changes. And that brings up another important issue: the potential for vocational tension between a father and son. Of course, this has always been a possibility between fathers and sons. But over the last 100 years or so, this tension has greatly increased. You see, in the agricultural era, a son would typically learn farming or some craft directly from dad. He would apprentice under dad, working alongside him. And dad was directly involved in his son's vocational development. But today, few circumstances allow a son to work beside dad. And it's not as easy for a dad to be directly involved in a son's vocational development. And that creates tension between many fathers and sons. Many dads don't know how or feel like they don't have the time to help develop their sons vocationally. And many sons feel like they're on their own just to figure it out. Fathers, we think this volume can be a tool not only to help you understand your own work better, but also to equip you to guide your sons through a deliberate process, whether that's to help him take over the family business or to assist him in discovering his personal vocational path. Either way, this tool will serve you well. Now, we've listed some of the tensions that are a product of history, but maybe you're facing even different challenges in your work. Maybe for you, it has less to do with history and more to do with your circumstances. Maybe you have an over-demanding boss or boss who doesn't give you enough direction. Maybe you're facing incredible financial pressure, living from paycheck to paycheck, or with the uncertainty that can come from living off commission. Maybe your work is monotonous and boring to you and is eating away at your soul. Or maybe you're like a lot of us and just have some unanswered questions about work. Questions like, am I in the right job or should I make a change? Am I making too much money or not enough money? How do I deal with failure or with being unemployed? How do I deal with success? How can I bring meaning into this thing called work that takes up so much of my life? Men, in this volume, we are going to take you through a deliberate process to help you answer these questions. Now, we're not going to solve all your problems. After all, on this side of heaven, work will always involve struggle. But the purpose of this session was to look more closely at some of the tensions we all face. In the next session, we're going to provide you with an alternative vision of work. Rather than taking our cues from culture or history, we're going to look at God's original intention for work and how our model of authentic manhood, Jesus Christ, restored a noble vision of work for mankind.
Please remember to invite a friend or a family member to join our next episode. Contact us for more information as well as the details on becoming a partner of this program. God bless you.